At times, we all feel lost and in search of something more. This is Cristina Dam, and this is Liberate the Podcast, a podcast designed to help inspire and guide you forward through everything spirituality, creativity, art, and just giving you a sense of empowerment so that you can be powerful, be magical, and be free. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, we are welcoming Mark Mezadourian, and he is an intuitive that specializes with communication with the angels and guides. And we're kind of going to be talking about angels, really what they say, and taking out the woo-woo and the practical so that it can reach more people and actually listen to what they say and not listen to what people say about them. I think I have that correct, right?
You do,
Mark?
yes, indeed. Well said.
And I think we're going to bring it into a little bit about what they've been saying and how they've been communicating with Mark about the current environment of the world right now and the things that are going on and maybe things that might be pushing a little people's buttons a little bit. So I ask you that you just keep an open mind and be nice to everybody in the comments and to us as you just expand your awareness, take what works for you, leave the rest. We don't need to get into any type of conflict here. So thank you, Mark, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Really excited about this one.
Good.
So let's talk a little bit to start out with learning and hearing a little bit about you and where did you start to have this gift of connecting with angels? Is something from you being a little boy? Is it something later on?
It's something more later on. I come from a naturally intuitive family. Like my grandmother saw angels when her mother died, and she would read, tea leaves and such. And we're just naturally intuitive, but it was all random. There was no logic to it. And then in 1998, I had an anxiety attack. In the short version of that story, it led me to know that what I was doing wasn't working. And in the short version of the story, I had gone to Europe. When I came back, the person in care of my apartment had gone on a heroin binge and destroyed my apartment. There was a negative energy there. And so I kicked her out. But there was this negative energy there. And I had an anxiety attack a couple of days later. But this thing was in my apartment. So I asked advice on how to get rid of it. Yeah. One of which was calling in Archangel Michael. So I reclaimed my apartment, was screaming, like, get the hell out of my apartment. And then there was a long hallway, and I was in the bedroom. In the living room, I saw the corner of my eye, this like black bear energy, like this huge black thing. And I threw this glass bowl I was holding down the hallway. It landed perfectly in the center, and the toilet flushed, and it was gone. So I was like, well, what happened? What actually happened? Yeah. And then the electricity had not been working. I went to work, it came back on. So this got my attention. And at the same time, my sister was working with angels, and she helped me to kind of start working with them. And I just noticed this relationship that built. When I would ask for help, it would be there.
Interesting.
And I would wake up every morning at 4:44, an angel sign of like, hi, we're here. So it just started to get into conversation with them. And this is my shift from being a cynical person to being a hopeful person. So it wasn't interesting to me to know, like, okay, this person says this about angels, or there's 7 tiers of angels, and just see, like, what do they say? Yeah. And that's been the main thrust of my interest in this, in doing workshops and readings for people. Like, what do they say? How can we get out of the way and report what they say?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I think that goes with a lot of different things, is that we get so caught up in the philosophy of things, and this author or this person's account or this is the course of action to take. Yeah. But it's like, what is the actual experience that you are going through? And in this case, what are you hearing from your connection?
Yes. Yeah. How do we get out of the way? Yeah. And how do we, one of the questions that frequently comes up is, how do you distinguish between ego and spirit? Which is, ego is conditional and to keep you small, and spirit is going to encourage and expand. And just getting into that familiarity over time and really trusting that time and muscle will help develop this. If we see intuition as a muscle that strengthens with use.
Absolutely.
And that's the space that we can then occupy. And at this time specifically, of recognizing how valuable spiritual work is and how essential it is at this time to have a sense of hope and belief. And the main theme with that seems to be everything in the last several years, or since 2016, has been about division. Division, dividing people wrong, making people bad, this and that. And so, especially in the pandemic, everything got constricted. Everyone's patterns were interrupted. Whether we agree with it or not, we were told what to do all the time. That's still happening.
Yeah.
So all these different things are happening. And so in this time of constriction, their message is, let's expand. Let's have hope. Let's choose. It's interesting, before the pandemic, I kept in my automatic writing with angels, they said multiple times, don't assume that you're free. Don't assume your freedom. Meaning that we have to claim our freedom and exert our freedom. And perhaps, how do we do that with not being in a fight?
Yeah.
How do we do that with love and perhaps having great passion and a light touch? So what's it like to advocate for things that we love and not make other people wrong or bad?
Yeah.
And this is like where it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You say since 2016. What was going on right then that it started causing the division? And is this something globally, or was this just a political climate that was going on in the U.S.?
Well, there is a meme that's supposed to be funny, but I don't think it's true. Since David Bowie died in early 2016, this started this wave of a lot of people, mass communicators dying. Bowie, Prince, Glenn Frey from the Eagles, all these different people started passing. And they started this kind of mass exodus of mass communicators. And I think people died, a lot of people have died in the last several years, and acknowledging that with honor. But there's kind of two categories, which is folks who transitioned because three actually. It was their time, but two, folks where the world was too much. It was too intense for people. And then folks who got out of the body to be guides. So there's a lot of help for us. The most recent example of this, in terms of the work I do, I work with angels and guides, but also open to, who shows up in doing a major prayer. Thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Archangels and Ascended Masters. In recent times, when Joan Didion passed, but you wouldn't assume was a spiritual person, she came forward in a group of lots of different groups. But she was like, oh my God, this is great. You guys are listening, and just with great curiosity and great passion.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, when we open the door, who actually shows up, who could help. David Bowie's a good guide, and so is Prince and such, Maya Angelou. And just seeing folks who are, once again, mass communicators, but also have wisdom to share and hope to share at a time, and this could be our family members too, at a time where there is that constriction happening. There's also, and this, I think we're learning this as humanity, all these threats, be they overt threats and veiled threats that really just do not serve us whatsoever. And just noticing what's it like to drop out of all threats and to consider them folly. So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because where your mind is and where you think about, that you start to live in that vibration, and then that vibration expands, and it expands and expands. I mean, a good example of this is just start your day on a bad note, right?
Yep.
Stub your toe. There's that saying that has been around forever. You woke up on the wrong side of the bed, go back to bed and wake up again, right? Why would somebody say and that it stood the test of time if you woke up, did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, right? It's that saying of you started your day bad, and then it turned into this snowball effect because that energy multiplied. Yeah. And that's the same when it's positive. Like when you're in a good space and you allow that good to expand, it's like people will say, this was the best day ever. I did this, and then I did this, and then I got a free ice cream, and then this happened, and then this happened, and whatever, right?
Where's the free ice cream?
I don't know. Yeah. I think they have a free ice cream down the street tomorrow.
At Menchie's? Yeah, good. We'll go. It'll be fun. Yeah.
It's like something like their 12th anniversary. Anyways, besides the point.
Yes.
So during this time, you then, okay, so if we backtrack a little bit, so you had, your sister was involved with angels, you come from this lineage of angels, and so you had this experience in your apartment with this roommate that left this vibrational energy or entity or whatever it was behind. You worked on clearing it, you noticed the radical shift in it, and that opened up your curiosity. I need to study this. And like through that, and I hope that people are listening, that you use that like a muscle, because the more that you do something, the more aware you become at anything, right?
Yeah.
Anything. You know, if you play a certain sport and you continue to play that sport, you can watch others play, you can notice their errors, you can notice that, you can notice the tweaks in the movements of your muscle group that cause different things. If you're a cook, you can notice the different flavors, you notice the different critiques that you could make of different restaurants. Whatever you do, the more you do something, the more aware you become of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important to know, because people oftentimes feel like they don't have that ability.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you do, you know?
You do. Yeah. And let's talk about that.
Okay. Let's talk about that.
Were you going to finish your thought?
No. That's kind of it.
Which is, we're in this shift spiritually. As spirituality evolves with humanity, the era we're in right now, so the previous era was the guru era, like someone knows more than you do, and the good is outside of you. The era we're in now is we're all empowered. We all have grace. We all have divine communication. And so it's matching that with facilitators, teachers, and intuitives and healers, which is the old paradigm being like, I have a gift, come to me, which I understand. Yeah. But in the new paradigm, it's let's work. Let's do this together. Let's evolve together, you know? And it's seeing where we could interrupt this idea, the myths around intuition, which is only some people could do it, it's dangerous, it's this, it's that, then release all the myths and let it become an experience. I do think with working with angels and guides, and including loved ones, that our goal is to shift it from a concept to an experience. And that, I think, very simply just takes time. But you mentioned the waking up thing of stubbing your toe in that. What if we started the day with any kind of intention or prayer? Thank you, angels, for being with me. Thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for all my interactions being positive. Anything you want me to know? And just getting into a space where there's even some intention. So we feel that, and we're noticing this with, part of the pandemic mentioned before has been all of our patterns shifted, and our sense of prioritization shifted pretty radically.
Oh, radically.
Radically. And so that's been jarring for everyone. And then also this scary thing, and a lot of people transitioning, a lot of people not being well and such. But so in that is this space of where does intention help?
Yeah. Where
does having a high vibration help? And where can the angels, they're buzzing here, so we're going to pay attention. Hang on just a second. That we're all included. That we're all included in the grace and love and unconditional love of the angels. That it's everyone, and that we all matter. And we all matter enormously. And that our happiness matters. So what can we do then to align ourselves with that? And to not feel excluded? And that might get into healing these core wounds that we have, unworthiness, undeserving, abandonment, all these different things.
Now, do you think that some of the unhealed wounds are really what we're seeing come to the surface as far as the divide and anger and hate and, projection that is happening?
I do. And I think that's very well put, that all the trauma's on the surface. And if we said this in a nutshell, America's growing up right now. And part of it's growing up kicking and screaming.
Like a toddler.
Like a toddler. Or, like
terrible twos.
That, or an angry adolescent. But it is, America doesn't like wisdom. And we're a very, very adolescent country. And so what's it like to be a conscious adult, which is a choice, especially for men. It's a choice to become a conscious adult. You don't have to grow up in America as a man. And just seeing there's so many different things to talk about with this. But at the core, at the archetypal core, we are witnessing the shift of the old masculine energy, which is shut up, I know more than you, into the new divine masculine, which is a confidence that's inclusive and encouraging, which is, I'm here, I'm going to hold space, and you're all welcome.
Yeah. As
opposed to, we're witnessing, and people think they're heroes, some of them, like these billionaires who just hoard. How is that cool?
Yeah.
How is that okay? That's like a 16-year-old boy, like mine, my spaceship, as opposed to sharing and generosity.
Yeah.
And just seeing what values are present in a conscious adult, which is an awareness of community, an awareness of how other people are doing. And
it's kind of like in essence that golden rule of like change yourself in order to change the world, right?
Yeah.
And so this we can look outside of ourselves and see all of this different type of energy or conflict or division or whatnot going on, and be also taken away by the sadness or the pain or the news or whatever it happens to be, right? These distractions outside of us that, that's going on, and that transition is happening for a growth plane is kind of what you're saying. So like whatever is going on is happening in order to facilitate growth or growing up, And it's not just in America. All these other countries are in the same kind of climate and stewing in a lot, or at least a large portion of them are.
Yeah.
And especially in the Western world. Yeah. And then, so that's happening, having trust, having faith in that, but saying, okay, where do I take my own ownership? Is that one of the biggest messages that is coming through? And how do I become what I could see as a mature adult, or what qualities or characteristics can I harness or do? Yeah.
The main message has been one of to have hope, to recognize that we matter, that our individual happiness matters, and then when we're happy, that radiates out, and it also to be expansive, to be big, to not constrict in a time of constriction, to say no, to have some positive defiance toward this message of you should hate this person. Here's the 5 reasons you should hate this person. What if we don't? What if we saw past that idea, past that advocacy, recognizing who's trying to scare you, who's trying to anger you, and perhaps saying no to all that, and very simply recognize this is a shared experience that we're in, and it's intense for everyone, and everyone has changed. Yeah. The folks who tried to not change got hammered.
Yeah.
Hammered. And so everyone is changing, and everyone's, once again, priorities have shifted, and it's seeing where we get to meet each other in a space of grace and spirituality. And perhaps we don't get hung up on the differences.
Yeah.
There's something the angels have downloaded in recent times, which is, in fear we are ordinary, in fear we are ordinary, in love we are unique. And what's it like for us to align with love and to be unique?
Yeah.
And to see that,
Because when you have that perspective of coming from that love or from that uniqueness, you value the differences, right?
Yeah.
That's a point of, okay, I'm like this and you're like this, or you see the world this way and I see it this way. Isn't that cool? Maybe I can shift into your model of the world for a minute, and you can shift into mine, and then together we create a third or a fourth or a fifth, and that expands, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. That's exactly kind of what you're saying. It's that expansion of energy. And, I don't know. I don't want every single meal to taste exactly the same. Do you? I don't want to go on the same vacation every single time. I admire the diversity in experience. And if somebody could sit here and listen and admire the diversity of experience or flavor, why would you not admire the diversity of humanity?
Yeah.
Yeah. kind of just one step bigger of looking at the same coin.
That's super well said. Yeah. Yeah. I do think it's worth acknowledging how traumatic the last few years have been for people and what's that done. And I think in this, it's worth acknowledging the question, which is, well, where the hell were God and the angels when all this stuff was happening? And to just have a different perspective, which is, they're here to support us and they love us unconditionally. It's not so much their thing to intervene. They will occasionally, but we look at a elementary school shooting, where were the angels? Maybe this is a human lesson, which is hard. All these different violations of social contracts. When a kid calls 911, someone should help them. Yeah. And just seeing, I think it's worth bringing up of understanding what context there is for that, which is we are growing up and we get presented with things that are completely unwanted, essentially with the view of like, are you guys done with this yet? Are you done with the guns yet? Are you done with harming each other yet? Yeah. Are you done with prioritizing greed and consolidation of power over generosity, humanity, and love? Mm-hmm. And just seeing it from that perspective, which could be a bit hard, but also it gets into a space of recognizing that there is order. Yeah. And in a time that seems highly chaotic, that there is order.
It's I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people.
It's a hard pill. I think it's worth acknowledging, though.
Yeah. Kind of like the basis of like Taoism or Buddhism, it's like, hey, there is order. There is, a reason for it and then a higher order for it. Yeah. Right. But, people get caught up in the details and they say, but why? Yeah. Right. And then how? Or yes. This didn't deserve. And right. Deserving, not deserving, the why, the how, all of that. If you're looking at it from this perspective, remember what I said in the beginning, everybody just open your visual and mind just a little bit, and then you can take it back down. You can or you can open it and let it stay open, whatever it is. But if you are looking at it from that perspective, in that, it's a growth opportunity, right? Yeah. But then if you are looking at it also from the higher levels of reincarnation or angels or other, life beyond this incarnation or meat suit, yes. Energy isn't created nor destroyed, and there's another thing, right? Yeah.
You enjoying this so far? Did you forget to subscribe? Make sure to do so. It takes 2 seconds. Just press that little button, the red one. The one. Just press it, little like. All right, enjoy the rest of this content.
And hard pill for people to swallow. But if you just try on, it's kind of like, and you were giving this like information of like this perspective of almost like them being up there and being like, have you learned this lesson yet? Have this, almost like this happened in order to have a learning and a lesson. Well, take it into your personal life. Has anybody that avoided the little like knocking that turns into a push, that turns into a bulldoze, that turns into, and it's like sometimes if we feel that something's not for us, we have that, a little incident will happen, right? Mm-hmm. And then if we don't fix that or deal with it or address it, then it becomes like a bigger, and then it becomes a bigger, and then it becomes a bigger, and, like, it doesn't stop until we learn the lesson or we make that adjustment. Yes. It just gets louder and bigger and more disruptive for our life. And that happens with people's health all the time, People will start feeling lethargic or bad or not good, and then maybe they have a condition that starts to happen, and then they don't address it. They don't make changes. And then that condition turns into a bigger condition, and then it turns into something else, and then suddenly they're on life support. Yes. Right? And I don't mean to be bleak on that, but there's this knocking that occurs, and then how much does the knocking have to occur? And if you subscribe to the model that Earth and this experience is kind of like an education for the soul development, right? And some people might subscribe to that, some people might not. I personally do. I feel like we're learning lessons and evolving in this experience. Well, oftentimes, and I hate to say it like that, we oftentimes learn more from the suffering than we do from the good.
We learn from suffering or insight,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's well said. I think this comes to a teaching of Ram Dass, which is around, he would work with people who were dying and also would counsel people who were experiencing grief and such, which is looking at the perspective, and this I think is helpful in the pandemic, of on a soul level, that choice to be done.
Yeah.
And that we honor that choice, no matter what the circumstances, and recognizing that there was a choice made on that level, not a conscious level, not a human level. And that just provides grace and some peace. And maybe that lands after a month or a year or 10 years, but it lands at some point like, oh, that's why that happened.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes decades or even lifetimes.
Yeah.
People look back and some of the different ways of which societies have been built, and the rise and falls of civilization and the mass destruction or the shifts and the change or the fights over even like the Silk Trade Road and the different things in it. You can say, okay, well, all of these people and this conflict happened and these people died or these murders happened or whatever, but then you can look back and you can say, oh, well, that led to this, that led to that led to this, and that led to this revelation or this inspiration or this movement or these laws or these regulations to shift things in the future, right?
Yeah.
And we can see it, but oftentimes only when we separate enough from it.
Excellent point. But if we look at this from the perspective where humanity keeps getting better and better and better and better, and that we're part of this, that perhaps we're already in a golden age of intuition, and perhaps all the things that have happened can steer us in that direction, where, not out of a superficiality, but out of depth, that we get to engage with all of ourselves. That's the great thing about spirituality, that we engage with every single aspect of ourselves, which feels good.
Yeah.
And this is the thing in the work of like, I could notice, be it on Zoom or in person, of like when we're working, everyone has the same look on their face, which is a relaxed power and confidence of who we are. Because the part of us who shows up to a spiritual event is our conscious adult self, knowing that there's more, knowing that there's something else to access, and that we're not doing it by ourselves.
Comes like this opening, and this is open, and we're like, ooh, ready?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I do think it's just worth acknowledging, which is why I brought this up, of like how hard this period has been, but also, what do they say? Of really getting into a space of expansiveness, to really acknowledge what do we actually want to have happen, not the circumstances, but what do we want to have happen. So how about we advocate for a peaceful world of generosity and love?
Yeah. And hold that vision and that collective consciousness and that, I think everybody has had some experience of that. They've willed or intended or used their imagination to create a circumstance in their life, right? I don't think that there's anybody alive that hasn't had at least one of those experiences where they realize the power of their own intention to create something. And oftentimes that happens when you're a child. I mean, you can have a strong intention that you want to go to this concert and your parents say no, and you sneak out the window and you find yourself at the concert, right? But there's a way or you convince them or something happens where suddenly you have what you were seeking, right?
Yes.
And it's about, I would say, even adding that curiosity for, I'm curious what this world would feel like, because the greater the curiosity, sometimes the greater the desire, right?
Yes.
You tell somebody not to look underneath that cabinet, and it's like, whatever you do, don't look over there. And suddenly, like, that curiosity, what do you mean don't look over there? Don't look over there. Oh, I have something to tell you, but it's a secret, so it's going to have to wait until later. What do? You freak out. You're like, but you got to tell me. I need to know because you told me that, it's a secret, know? And so it triggered a curiosity. So I think that there's a power in that, in that visualization and that manifestation of even like adding a layer of curiosity to it to say, okay, what if the world was generous and kind? What if it was
What if?
harmonious?
Yeah.
What if?
What if all of our needs were met? What if we mattered to everyone?
Rather than these people matter, these people have this, and everyone else is struggling. What if we moved out of surviving into thriving together?
Yeah,
You know, and that's the evolution.
it is.
Yeah, and that's the healing of trauma. And I think with trauma, I've been reading The Body Keeps a Score.
Okay.
It's just been just a revelation of what trauma looks like. I knew a lot of it. I've experienced all these different things, but just seeing it elegantly presented and just seeing how much trauma is present in most people and how we can really lovingly help that we have more means, more techniques to heal trauma than ever before. And so why is that in an era when all the trauma is on the surface? That this is a mass healing that's happening right now. And I do think, and this has been a message from the angels repeatedly in the pandemic, that we're leading by doing spiritual work, that we are creating the world that everyone else won't inhabit. And why? It's because everyone's distracted. Everyone is so distracted, and it's understandable that people are distracted. But just that we're having intention, vision of a generous, kind, and loving world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and distracted energy isn't powerful energy.
Right.
Have you ever been even distracted with 15 things going on? Are you really paying attention to any of them?
Mhm.
So is any of them really
Mhm.
getting done? Right?
Yeah.
You know, if you're juggling 10 balls in there and you got to do this and you got to respond to the email and do this and this, and are you doing any of it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might be kind of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be making a push, and so that's not to negate that things aren't happening, but if you really focus your energy and say, I'm going to just do this and I'm going to turn off distractions,
Mhm.
you're probably a lot more productive at it
Yeah.
and a lot more powerful, and
Yes.
that's, you know, that's the power of intention.
Mm-hmm.
On that is why people that are intending something, you know, to be created, they have a little bit more vibration behind it.
Yeah. I do think this is why the artists that we know and love are the artists that we know and love, because we witnessed that in them, that they created something.
Mm-hmm.
They had the intention, they created space, and took the action.
Yeah.
Like this. Yeah. Would you mind if we talked about anxiety for a few minutes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is so prevalent. And I do think it's worth, I'm part of the autism community because of a nephew, and I learned a lot about the EMFs and wireless radiation. I do think the phones are fantastic technology. All these things are great. They're so not good for our bodies and for our psyches. I do think if we see if half the anxiety is created by technology, and why that would be is most people sleep next to their phones or have some kind of digital system in their rooms, like an Alexa and such. So what that is doing is they're both so a cell phone is constantly connecting with the cell tower.
Yeah.
And the Alexa system is constantly blasting out like 30 feet of wireless radiation, which is chaotic energy. Our brains are registering that activity as light, so we're not going to sleep deeply.
Mm-hmm.
There's no chance. And the sound of Wi-Fi is, 10 pulses a second and such. So the thing, I've learned this from two main sources. One, there's a book called Digital Minimalism by a Georgetown professor named Cal Newport. And there's a great radio interview with him, half hour, where he distills that our brains and bodies are working out of balance. The main thing that is happening, creating anxiety, and it's easier to see in teenagers, is the absence of long brain waves. So everything now is a short staccato brainwave. So the long brainwaves come from reading, from being quote unquote bored, letting your brain process things, also having a long conversation, walking in nature, doing things that have a sustained focus to them for a long time. That's almost entirely disappeared.
Oh, no, it doesn't really. I mean, some people you see them out maybe hiking or doing
Right.
things, but oftentimes they're
Of their phone.
on their
And
phone.
it's understandable. And I understand what is present with the phone, that it's our social connection point. It's a vital object now. But it's just introducing this idea of what if that got left behind? Maybe it's not the first thing we look at. Strongly advocating that we protect our sleep environment like it was in nature, so nothing electronic.
Yeah.
And with the Alexa systems, them those digital assistants and also cordless phones, which are less prevalent now, but the base station, they're both just blasting out constant wireless radiation.
Yeah.
And so, and that's pretty intense. It's like a cell tower.
No, and they say, like, if you look at the warnings on phones and things like that, if you actually read those like terms of use and those documents that you sign away at that nobody reads, but there's I don't know if it's supposed to be like page 5 or 10 or whatever, but for like an iPhone, that the chance of brain cancer is elevated due to the use of holding your phone to your head.
Yes.
And then they've gotten away with, using those studies. They've kind of they didn't, scare everybody in society with that, but instead they said, okay, iPods or
which are wireless,
but where it's a little less than this device going, But I actually get like an intense, like if I have to, if like, let's say, I don't know, I'm in an environment where it's not appropriate to have I try to use my speaker on my phone as much as possible, but like maybe I don't want somebody to hear my conversation. I'm in a public place or something. Sure. And I put it up to my ear, even if it's for 5 minutes, I feel like I can feel the difference. Yeah. And I've noticed the difference of unplugging the Wi-Fi sometimes at night and the ability to just like I'm like my body feels like it just went from like this to it's this is a fascinating sense of contrast of when we give our bodies a break from the technology, and it's easiest to notice in nature, even a park. Oh, yeah, such. Even just for a little bit, even if people are on the phones and stuff like that, there's a little less concentration of it, so you notice it. But if you take a trip, I don't know, maybe to a forest or something like that, even if you have your wireless device of a cell phone with you, but you're not bombarded with everything from the city or so much, or it's not such a high concentration of it, you don't feel it as much, and you can feel like you can relax better, sleep better, whatnot.
Absolutely. I do think there's another aspect to all this with our technology, which is there's an idea that we're supposed to be available all the time. There's just no way that's sustainable.
Yeah.
And that it's okay for us to have individualization and have autonomy and to not be married to that. I understand for teenagers, I have a 6-year-old nephew I'm close to, just seeing his relationship with technology where everything is, it's just right there. And understanding the dopamine hit that happens with that, all that contact, totally understanding that. But just seeing a space where we do add things in, like the long brain waves.
But it adds this level of when you say this trauma and mental illness and anxiety and stuff like that, it's adding in like the pressure, right? Yes. Because there is an expectation that if somebody texts you, you're supposed to get back to them right away, and that it has to happen within this period of time. An email maybe is a little bit longer of a time, but it's still supposed to be right away. Right. It's immediate. There's an expectation in society, so then that puts an expectation on you, which causes an ability to not be present, which causes an inability to really build meaningful relationships and connections, right? So it's like this snowball effect that happens. Yeah. And it's like, and I'm sure you've witnessed it. I've witnessed it before. You don't get back to somebody for a day or two on a text message and they think like you died. And I'm like, oh, it's busy.
Yeah.
That should be normal. That should be okay.
There's all these different levels of expectation. But if we just do get into a space where we just operate out of a graciousness for ourselves and take care of ourselves, and allow ourselves to drop out of all the externals for a bit and nurture ourselves and befriend ourselves. So it's interrupting this idea that our good is outside of ourselves and nurturing the truth that good is right here.
Love it.
And that could be our work, and that's one of the main angel messages is we are loved exactly as we are, and this advocacy to take care of ourselves and let them be part of that, that they're here to support us with tremendous unconditional love.
So you help people hear messages of angels, but also be able to hear the messages themselves.
Absolutely. It's working that like a muscle, and that's the whole goal, is to that we're all tuned in and we're hardwired for it. you know.
And you're going to be doing a workshop with us, but I mean, hopefully we have you again in the future, because I know by the time this comes out, you know, hosting workshops, helping people to connect, helping people to build that muscle, and also sharing insight and wisdom and knowledge from the messages, you know. They can be very general and very specific to that individual, right?
For sure.
And where can people find you, Mark?
Where people can find me, I'm most active on Instagram and YouTube. On Instagram, I'm there posting stuff most days. I have, in the pandemic, before the pandemic, I got 2 pieces of guidance. One was the words hell spaces and Zoom. and I used Zoom in the past and didn't like it, and they've changed the platform, so they're the winners of the pandemic. But so with that, when the pandemic started, I started having free held spaces on Zoom, which still continue on Tuesdays and Saturdays. But there's a whole collection of recordings that are free on YouTube from those different sessions.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
No, so I mean, if you're interested in some of the guidance on a global and societal level that has already been channeled and deciphered down to Mark, check out his YouTube. What is your YouTube called?
Mark Mezadourian.
All right, perfect. Easy.
It's me in a blue shirt without the beard. Yeah. But there's playlists there. There's a start here, like, you know, let's just do some clearing and talk about angels and such. There's also a playlist for empaths, which I think is super important. The empath truth being, if we're sensitive to energy, it means we can influence energy. And we're so used to this, what if it's that?
Yeah.
You know, and thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 feet of unconditional love, which would include this whole store, Casa Vega, you know, all that stuff. And so there's a playlist for that, building relationship with the angels, and also support for wellness and healing.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's needed. Support is needed now more than ever.
Yeah. And all those things are free. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up today?
That everyone matters, and that our happiness matters, and that our well-being matters, and there's a tremendous amount of help for us. And just in recognizing how challenging this time has been, to really recognize it's happening for a reason. There is a logic to it, and it's okay for us to drop out of the idea that everyone's going to change at once. It's okay for us to just kind of zoom ahead and to occupy a space of graciousness and peace, and to not have an expectation of other people based on role, position, authority, or this or that. They should be doing things that we lead. And we get to perhaps tell elected officials what we would like them to do, all these different things, but also just indeed walking our talk. What is it like to be kind? What's it like to be confident? What's it like to notice someone you disagree with, go, oh, that's interesting, as opposed to going like, I hate them, you know, and just get into a space of grace. But also in doing this, it's being kind to ourselves and our nervous systems. Our nervous systems are just maxed.
Yeah, they're shot.
And we see that. Yeah, they're shot. Way too much information coming in. Our brains are not. Also, with long brainwaves, the idea of being bored, which is, and it's not the best wording, but letting our brains have nothing to do, so our brains can sort things out. That's gone off the table.
Yeah, that's just like that peace where we can recharge, where we can take in, where we can actually go through and decipher and actually maybe integrate our experiences, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There's no integration happening. There's just on to the next thing.
Stimulation.
You know?
Yeah. So it's and
then not to mention that's the stimulation from the outside. We're also overstimulating from the inside.
Yeah. Last
stat that this was years ago, but 87% of the American population was physically addicted to caffeine. And so, you know, how much, and then it has that grown, and then the sugar addiction, which sugar is one molecule different than heroin on a chemical level, and so that's hitting the same receptors. And you go to any places and they're loading things in. I mean, you go to Starbucks now and you get a nice coffee and they put sugar in it. Why were you? If I got a hot coffee, you wouldn't put sugar in it, but the iced coffee, it comes automatically with sugar in it, and so it's like this sugaration and, you know, caffeination that's happening. Yeah. Not to mention any of the other substances that are on the increase. But so we have all of that going on the inside.
Yeah.
And then you have this on the outside. Then you have all the pollutants that you're tapping into that are chemicals that are being spread or eaten, you know. I don't know, the pesticides have gotten out of control and the different sprays on it. So you're having a vegetable, not only is the nutrition from the soil completely depleted, so you're getting like 1/100th of the vitamins, but you're eating all these chemicals that are going in, you know, or heavy metals.
Yeah.
So it's time that you have to be consciously aware of you and say that even within that, you can swim and navigate it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be paralyzing. It's just know it so that you can do something about it.
One thing at a time.
Yeah.
And we move forward and we're doing it together. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Good.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. It's a really pleasure to talk with you, and I appreciate your insights and holding space and asking great questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that we'll have you on again if anybody is having some questions that you would want Mark to answer. His connection with the angels that is super strong, and you would want that information for what they say. You know, maybe leave it below, and we can have him back soon to ask some of those questions and get that insight that you're seeking, because this is about the collective, not just about what questions came to my mind. So thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know, give it some love, because you see our numbers. They're not high on YouTube. I know audio is a lot more popular because we started a lot longer ago. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or one of those platforms, go and check out our YouTube. We've also cut this up into short segments. So you can either share one of the juiciest segments on your social media that you felt was really empowering, or you can just watch us in person and hear the information again. Thank you so much, and until next time.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like it, subscribe, and share it with your friends. If you want to hear more about what we have going on and happening online or in the neighborhood, check out liberateyourself.com and sign up for our mailing list. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Liberate Yourself. It's URSELF, URSELF. Until next time, be powerful, be magical, and be free.